If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
If you can wrap your brain around this, you're not going to be the same person.
And I'd like to start us off with this one in particular. It's going to be Genesis 49:10. It states, "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." So the claim being made here when citing this particular verse is that it has to do with the scepter. It looks like to me the claim being made is that Jesus being stabbed by the centurion, and the ruler's staff from between his feet. So that's supposed to be, at least according to the Christian interpretation, Jesus being crucified, or a description of his crucifixion in Genesis. So what are your thoughts on that, Rabbi Singer?
So what I'd like to do is counterintuitive. I'd actually like to strengthen the Christian argument. I want to steelman this. So their argument is actually, I want to present it in the strongest possible way. The context of Genesis 49 is Jacob is on his deathbed, and he is blessing all of his children. And they're not blessings in the typical sense, but it's a prediction about their future and destiny and their character. And Judah receives by far the most elaborate of all the blessings. In fact, in the verses that precede it says, all your brothers will praise you. That's why the children of Israel all call themselves Jews, regardless of tribe. The passage you're referring to, Genesis 49, verse 10, is very striking. It should be stated that this passage is understood variously, because the text says that a scepter shall not depart from Judah. And a scepter here, we'll read it as a scepter that a king would have in his hand, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Again, conveying that rulership will be his, ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh comes. And to him all the nations will serve. This is the second reference to the Messiah in the Torah. It's very rare. This is the second one. Now, you're going, where? I don't see the word Messiah here. So the word Shiloh, what does that mean exactly? So the consensus, it's not everyone, but the consensus is that Shiloh means, is referring to the Messiah, when there'll be peace, when there'll be completeness. So here's a promise to the tribe of Judah. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm steelmanning this. I want to make the Christian position as strong as possible. So the Christian argument goes like this, that to Judah is given the promise that from him, from his descendants, will come a king, and the scepter will be his. And that will continue until the Messiah comes. And Shiloh means the Messiah. Why is not germane? It happens to be the consensus in the Jewish view. So we're going to amp this up. So here's the argument in its completeness. Christians will say that Jewish people have a fundamental problem here. Where is your Messiah? After all, there were Davidic kings, obviously beginning from King David, ending with Tzidkiyahu, Zedekiah, who was the last Davidic king at the end of the First Temple, covering a period of time of less than 500 years. From that point, that's 2,500 years ago, where is your king? Where is the promise? Must be, Christians argue further, that there is a king, because Genesis 49, verse 10, the passage you just cited, states that there would always be a king. And if the Jews do not have a king, which we don't today, and we haven't had a king in 2,500 years, there must be something wrong. That means you have failed. You Jews have failed to recognize your true king, your true Messiah, your true anointed one, your true lamb. You not accepted Golgotha. You didn't accept the cross. I mean, you get where this is all going, okay? So the argument is that Judaism, therefore, must be a defective religion based on this passage. Okay, this is very important to understand. That's the steel man. That's the strongest way this argument is made. This argument, of course, is enormously problematic, and on so many levels. And let's go into two massive points. This argument is predicated on the following reading: that Jacob was conveying to Judah that at all times there would always be a Davidic king. And therefore the argument goes, given that the Jews are saying we have no king, which we don't have a king today. I mean, we have God, but we don't have a Davidic king today from Judah. So therefore Judaism is a defective religion, which points to the truth of Christianity, but this is completely silly. The promise is that whenever there would be a legitimate king from the time of, obviously, from David, when Shmuel Hanavi, when the prophet Samuel anointed David, so from that point, any legitimate king would have to be from the house of David, would have to be a descendant, based on the Davidic covenant, 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12 through 16. The promise there is made by Nathan. Even if your children will sin against me, I will never take away the covenant from them like I did to your predecessor. But it does not mean that at every point in Jewish history there would be a king. It only means rather that when you have a legitimate king, it will always have to be from the house of David. Meaning, we'll be using the word David in brackets in Genesis 49 as Judah, okay? So we have two readings. The Christian says that Genesis 49 verse, it's very important that you get this. The Christian argument is Genesis 49 verse 10 is foretelling that there would always be a king from the tribe of Judah, okay? The therefore is Judaism is defective. You don't recognize a king. We have a king. He was nailed to the cross, INRI. INRI, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Rex, king. You have a king, okay? The Jewish reading of the text is, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that whenever you would have a king, he has to be from the house of David. And now, there are other people who proclaim themselves the king of the Jews. Herod, famously. The Maccabees, tragically. They were priestly. They were not legitimate. Okay. The question is, who's correct? So the Jewish reading of Genesis 49 is not that there would always be a king, but rather whenever there would be a king, it has to be from Judah, from the moment David is anointed. Now, if you're watching me now, you don't have to be listening carefully. You figured it all out for yourself because, as you know, there was no Davidic king during the Second Temple period. So the Christian reading, this constricted reading of this text has to be completely flawed because even Christians admit that from the destruction of the First Temple until Jesus, there was no Davidic king. So the promise of Genesis 49 verse 10 in the view of the church is completely shattered, is completely destroyed. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that whenever you have a king, it has to be from the house of David, from the moment it begins. Okay? So that's stage one. So their reading is completely wrong because there are 500 years approximately from the destruction of the First Temple until the cross, about 500 years. The second problem is even more monumental with this aberrant reading of the text. And here we find in many passages of the Jewish scriptures a prophecy that, in fact, the Jewish people would lose a Davidic king for a long period of time until the Messiah would come. Meaning, I just want to make this very clear, in the Hebrew Bible, we are told, the children of Israel are told explicitly about a very long exile immediately preceding the coming of the Messiah. I want to draw your attention to Hosea chapter 3, verse 4 and 5. Context: Hosea lived during the Assyrian Empire. He was a contemporary of Isaiah, Micah. They all lived at the same time, okay? So he lived during the time of, like, Hezekiah. He lived at that time. That means he lived 2,700 years ago. Hosea lived long before any of this went on. And Hosea says the following: "For the children of Israel will remain for many days without any king, without any prince, without a sacrificial system, with the teraphim, with the ephod, what the high priest wore, none of those accoutrements, until when afterward," this is a mind-blowing prophecy, "at the end of it all, the children of Israel return, and they will seek the Lord their God, and David their king." That's the Mashiach. Remember, just again, historical reminder, Hosea lived, 250, 300 years after King David. And they will then come trembling to the Lord their God in the goodness, ba'achris hayamim, in the end of days. Listen, this, if you can wrap your brain around this, you're not going to be the same person. So the text in Hosea, and this is an example, tells us that the last epoch of Jewish history will last a very long time, and it could be characterized as a period where the Jews have no king, have no priest. That means the priesthood is gone. We don't have the sacrificial system. None of those things until the end of days, when the children of Israel return to God and David, which is the Messiah. That means the text is saying explicitly that there would be an enormous period of time without a Davidic king. Moreover, and if you're a Christian, just think about it, what the heck is Hosea referring to? It means, according to you Christians, the Jews have a king, and they have a high priest. Read Hebrews. I'm not kidding. The book of Hebrews is really is an argument against Judaism, and it's basically saying that Jesus is everything, including king and priest, according to Melchizedek, but he's a king and priest. The Bible is saying that you will have none until the Messianic age. So what the church is arguing is completely contradicted by the Hebrew Bible explicitly. Now, I know there's a Christian thinking, so what do you do? Where is your sacrificial system today? What do you do instead of the sacrifices? Hosea is saying you're not going to have it. So then you're going to go to Hosea 14, verse 1, 2, and 3, where he tells you that you should pray instead of bring a sacrifice. So Genesis 49, verse 10, is a prophecy. It's a very unique messianic prophecy in the Torah. There are really only two massive ones, Numbers 24:17 and this one. And in this one, it's saying that once it's a Davidic king, it'll always be from Judah. It does not mean there'll be no pauses or no periods where there'll be no king. So that's a brilliant question and a very, very important answer. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא